Hey folks, it's Rob Flux here with another Sunday session, and today we're going to be talking all about how to do property development in your self-managed super fund. Now, some of us, like myself, are getting a little bit close to retirement, and we're wanting to work out how do we maximize getting the returns out of our property development. We've got all these property development brains and knowledge and that sort of thing, but we've been told by our accountant and our financial planner that developing in self-managed super fund is very, very risky, very challenging, lots of legislation to get through and the like. So how do we solve the problem? In order to help us to navigate that particular issue, please welcome to the stage, folks, Raymond Hempstead from Supavest. Mate, welcome aboard.
G'day, Rob. Thanks for having us aboard. Look forward to our chat today.
No worries at all, mate. So firstly, tell us a little bit about who Supavest is, who are yourself, what's your background, and that sort of thing. And in short, why should we be listening to you today?
Okay. My background, I'm a Queanbeyan boy. I sold real estate when I was 18, 19, got out of it, hated it, moved to Sydney, became an accountant. So don't hold that against me. Then I got out of accounting and was self-employed for many, many years. And then I got back into real estate and found that some of the choices that people could do in a self-managed super fund were very limited. And then I came up with Supavest, which literally now gives people total choice in what they can build using their own money. And I mean total choice, whatever they want. So that's the
that sounds very, very attractive, because we've been told that there are all these issues and challenges in the super fund space. So maybe we can just kind of set the scene and give some background to everybody. Just go, well, firstly, why do we want to, I guess, do all the developments in our self-managed super fund in the first place? There's clearly some huge tax advantages to it. So, mate, there's two phases in super. There's accumulation phase and retirement phase. Give us some insights into where some of the tax advantages might be in both of those phases.
All right. Understanding there's, in our life, as you said, there's before retirement, after retirement. So if your whole focus at the moment is developing and making money outside of super in companies and family trusts and unit trusts, etc., that's great, because you can use that money before you retire for your lifestyle. But if you're now using that as a strategy to look after yourself post-retirement, you need to get some good advice, because why do you want to keep on paying tax? Because a self-managed super fund, one, during construction, and when you understand a self-managed super fund, it's got its separate borrowing capacity outside of you personally. So you can be developing stuff outside to look after your lifestyle before you retire. At the same time, you can be now developing stuff inside your self-managed super fund. And when you think about the tax rates that you're paying at 15% in a self-managed super fund, yes, you can't touch the money. But if it's for your long term, you're now saving between 15 and 30% extra tax that you're not paying because it's in a self-managed super fund. And that now goes back into reinvesting to look after your long-term retirement and for your families.
And so it amplifies basically by having tax saving initially. That then means more money to go back into the next project, which then means that project can be slightly bigger, and then that gets more savings. And so you get a little bit of a hockey stick on this towards the end of it. But you did touch on a very, very important, I guess, thing, and that is you can't touch the money yet, folks.
Not yet.
not until you are actually in retirement phase. And now, depending upon when you were born, retirement age is slightly different for each person. So please make sure, and probably worthwhile actually stating this all the way. All of this is educational in nature, folks. You need to be talking to your accountants and or your financial planners as to mapping out your future in the first place. But hopefully what we're going to give you today is a whole bunch of intelligent questions to be interrogating those people with. So
exactly.
That said, mate, if somebody wanted to do something within a self-managed super fund, they've not yet set up a super fund, or maybe they've got one and they're not utilizing it, I guess, to its fullest potential. There's a whole bunch of rules and regulations that sit in around what you are actually allowed to do, and it's known as the SIS Act.
That's right.
Tell us a little bit about the SIS Act. Firstly, what does SIS stand for, and then what is its intended purpose?
All right. SIS Act is the Superannuation Industry Supervision Act of 1993. Now, this is the legislation that controls, if you have a self-managed super fund, this controls you as a trustee of what you can and can't do. It gives you the broad outlines, and this is where people say, I don't need to get financial advice. Well, unless you're a lawyer and understand this and you read it and know the ins and out of it, you do need someone on your team that understands where you're going long term, and also they understand the SIS Act and how that plays into what you're looking to do. So it's the legislation that controls everything we do in the self-managed super fund space.
Yeah, in lay speak, it's the rules and regulations that you, as the trustee of your self-managed super fund, are allowed to operate under. So it says what you can and can't do, I guess what you're allowed to invest in, how you're allowed to invest in it, all those sorts of things. And one of the most important parts of the SIS Act is it says that you must have a structured investment plan in place to actually say, hey, you're not just winging it, but rather you're strategically investing for the future.
That's it. And how are you going to support yourself when you get to retirement? Because that's what the government wants you to do. They want to know that, hey, hopefully they're not going to be looking after you.
Yeah. So there's the structured investment plan. So I guess what the self-managed super fund is going to do. Who puts one of those things together, mate?
You as the trustees, you have to put it together. Now, if you've got the smarts to be able to do that, you can do it. Or if you haven't, then you need to go to a financial advisor to be able to structure that for you.
And does the financial advisor need to be an accountant or a financial planner? It could be either or both. How does that work?
Oh, they need to be licensed to be able to talk to you about that and being able to structure that. So if you've got an accountant that holds a financial planning license, then talk to them. Otherwise, you need to go and talk to a financial planner. But I suppose I'll put a bit of a caveat around this. If you're going to talk to your accountant and financial planners, you need to find out what their biases are. Do they understand property? Can they talk about it? Do they want to talk about it? Or are they going to try and swing you into a different direction? Because if they don't know what your long-term goals are, and if you want to be playing in the property space, they need to understand you and how you fit into that, and also how they play in that space as well.
Yeah, I'd kind of go into that further and say, look, if you're talking to your accountant, they must be a specialist in the self-managed super fund space and not somebody who just dabbles it, but rather have the appropriate licenses, that they've actually got a dedicated team. They don't do one or two of these a year, but they're actually, looking after a fair proportion of their client base.
Yes.
And also, if you're trying to do property development in this, then you want to make sure that the accountant also, I guess, has a specialty within the property development space, because there's lots of accountants out there that are great for business tax advice and personal tax advice and that sort of thing, but they haven't dabbled so much in the property development space. So I think we need, I guess, those two specialties at minimum. And then, as you touched on, their personal biases, sometimes they go, that's too dangerous, and they'll tell you their perspective without necessarily it being, I guess, a financial, advice per se, because an accountant is not licensed to give you financial advice, but they can set up the super fund.
They can. Let's, and I can say this, I'm an accountant. Don't hold it against me, guys.
But he's still a nice guy, folks.
Yeah, I'm okay. My wife still loves me after 36 years. Accountants, when we get taught accounting, we get taught about looking at the background, where you've been, and we get taught about reporting about where you've been. The skill about looking forward and then anticipating and forecasting, that's a different sort of skill. And there's a lot of accountants out there that are just focused on looking behind them and looking in the rearview mirror and tell you where you've been and just trying to do that. So again, get the right advice. Make sure the accountant that you're working with is a forward-looking person, not a rear-looking person.
Yeah. And someone who is a forward-looking person, I guess, is your financial planner. And so they're typically the people that everyone refers to say, hey, go talk to a financial planner before doing anything. And we're going to do the same. Make sure you do. But they're only licensed to actually talk about products. Sorry, they're only legally allowed to talk about products that they're licensed for. So they have some limitations in what they can and can't talk to, and hence it's important that you actually understand what that is. So they can talk about, I guess, shares and manage investment schemes and manage products that might sit out there, what are called alternatives funds, I guess life insurance policies and the like. But strange as it might seem, property is not actually deemed to be a financial product. And so they, whilst you would think that they are the kind of people that you should be talking to, and they are the people that are going to help you set up your structured investment plan if you've not had one, because they're not incentivized on it, they may not be encouraged to talk openly about that.
Exactly.
So we're in a little bit of a moral dilemma here with regards to, hey, we're always told to go get this independent advice, but the people that we're getting the independent advice for aren't able to, I guess, because it's not a licensed product, and they're not commissioned on doing anything that you're going to do in your own personal name. They're not incentivized to advise you to do that.
And one of their biases, like my bias, is building new property. I'm open about that. I don't play anything other than the new property space, and it's something that you own the land on, not cubic volumes of air. Most financial planners have a bias about the share market, and they will continually push people into that way because that's their bias. If you're going to be talking to a financial planner, ask them up front, hey, you understand, this is your money. This is your long-term retirement. You're not delegating the responsibility of it to someone else. You're taking control of it. So you need to be asking the hard questions, and don't be embarrassed about asking the hard questions at the front to interview the financial advisors and accountants to make sure they're right to come onto your team, onto your development team. Just like you'll interview builders to make sure they fit and they can build what you want, you need to be doing the same thing with your financial advisors and your accountants, that they fit within your team and have the same vision as you do.
Yeah, and are they equally, I guess, investing in property, or I guess investing in property developments, or doing property developments themselves, all those sorts of things as well, so they can talk openly about those things. So yes. my candor would be open-minded, and then have a healthy skepticism of any advice that you're given, given that they're only incentivized on selling you stuff that they are commissioned on. So you want to be asking the hard questions to go, well, why are you anti this thing that I want to do? Give me your genuine insights, and then you yourself have to be the one who are actually making the hard decisions as to what way you want to go.
That's it, exactly.
Yeah. So all of that said, mate, we've got what is a super fund? We've got where do we go to actually get advice on setting them up and that sort of thing. But what are the common, I guess, myths or issues or that sort of thing that we would typically come across when we're wanting to do developments in our self-managed super fund, because we've been told that it can't be done. And
Absolutely.
clearly the answer is it can be done. Otherwise, we wouldn't be sitting here today. But it's about understanding what the constraints are and then working within those constraints.
It is. And we've had it in the last couple of weeks. Clients have gone to their accountants and said, the accountants have said, no, you can't do it. You can't build in your super fund, your self-managed super fund, which is, the accountants just need to be re-educated, because you've always been able to buy property in super. You've always been able to build. If you're going to be building, in most instances, it's going to be with cash, 100% cash, then you can have your choice. But this is a personal opinion, if you've got $1 million in cash in your super fund and you've got some time, why are you putting all the cash in? Why aren't you using leverage? Because outside of super, we use leverage to pick up capital growth and use other people's money. You can do the same thing inside a self-managed super fund, but that's where it now becomes illegal to do that if you're going to be doing development. And that's set out in the SIS Act, because the SIS Act is there in this section to be able to protect the assets of your super fund. And it puts that limitation in there. And to be able to set it up correctly, if you have got debt, then now you can't do it within your super fund up until now.
Yeah, well, we might break it down into, I guess, smaller bite-sized pieces and then go, the accumulation of all of that is why people are giving you, I guess, that particular advice. But folks, we're here to tell you there's an antidote to that. Okay?
There is.
So when you actually understand what the constraints are, then you know what is the dance that you need to do in order to, be completely compliant across the board. So, look, one of the first myths that I regularly hear about is the fact that you need a minimum of $200,000, in your self-managed super fund to even consider, or in your super, to even consider setting up a self-managed super fund. So, and so where does that, I guess, myth come from?
It really comes back to the understanding your self-managed super fund has to be able to make enough money to cover the operating expense of the self-managed super fund. Now, if you look at what you're paying in an industry super fund or a retail fund where your money's in at the moment, I don't think a lot of people actually look at the fees and charges they're being charged in that, and they need to be taking control of that and seeing that. If you've got $150,000 in industry super funds, you're paying more than what it costs to manage a self-managed super fund. And the circa fees on that, you're looking at accountant fees, ASIC fees, and all the rest of it. It's $2,500–3,500. So if where you're taking that money and investing it, if it's not making that, that's where they say you need more than that to be able to cover the operating expenses. And so where are they investing it?
Yeah, so given
investments.
Given, I guess, and you just said 2,500 to 3,000. Let's just say it's 5,000, right? Right. If you've got 200K, it'll be, and you are investing it anywhere and getting any sort of return, it would be very hard for it to not be covering that 5K of costs.
That's right.
And so that's really where the number has come from, to say, well, you want to make sure that you're at minimum covering the cost to actually have the fund be operational, and then obviously, the better you invest, the more money you're going to make. But 200K is really that kind of threshold before it actually tends to make sense.
That's right. And then it comes back to the investment strategies that you've got, how you're going to be investing that money to get longer term growth on that money. Because it's not about, hey, 200 grand's not going to get us a lifestyle in retirement unless you're living somewhere we don't want to live.
Yes. Well, I can actually talk to that one with some stats that I know off the top of my head. So the Association of Superannuation Funds of Australia, so ASFA, have said that for a couple, if you own your house outright, that you can be comfortable on $62,000 a year. Now, I don't know about you, but 62K doesn't sound comfortable. But when you actually break it down, I understand why they say that, because your mortgage is one of your biggest expenses. And if you have your mortgage paid off, then you're really paying electricity, food, the occasional holiday. It is possible to live on 62K, but boy, I'd like to have a little bit nicer lifestyle than that.
But one of the things they don't tell you, that out of that $62,000 is the government pension. And each year you're drawing down capital to make that 62. So after a period of time, you run out of capital, and then you're just on the government pension. So,
which is all the more reason that we want to, I guess, get the money working hard right here, right now.
Let's start doing some developments properly.
Let's start doing some stuff. So the next one, that you can't actually develop in your self-managed super fund at all. So I hear that a lot. Now, I know that particular one to be false, but given my licensing requirements or lack thereof, I'm going to be very careful in what I can say here. But tell me, mate, other than your particular solution, can people develop in their self-managed super fund right now?
They can, but the complexities around it are huge, because it comes back to having arm's length arrangements between yourself and your self-managed super fund, and being able to justify those every month while you're doing the development. So there's some different structures out there. You can set up unit trusts and all this other stuff that gets very complex and expensive. But it comes down to, if you're going to be doing the development and you're selling it to your self-managed super fund, or you're doing it for the super fund, if you make one mistake, like I was sitting in a seminar last year and the client's accountant made a mistake of classification of an interest rate that they got off the ATO government website by 0.25%. It was wrong. That made the entire deal non-compliant. So that meant the client got a fine of 50% or 45% of the asset value of the super fund because there was a small mistake. This is how serious the government takes the management of your management of your superannuation and your self-management of that. So it can be done, but the complexities are huge.
And knowing that SIS Act back to front is, I guess, key to that side of things. So if you're nerdy enough to go through, I guess, the fine print of those sorts of things, it can be navigated. And I guess the things that we're going to be talking about a little bit later is how Supavest can actually help you to navigate that, because you've come up with a workable solution that's been signed off by the ATO with regards to its compliance. So we know that that's there, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in the show, folks. But one of the other, I guess, myths and issues is that you can't borrow to improve the property. So you can borrow to buy it, but you can't borrow to improve the property. Is that one true or false, mate?
It's actually true. You can't improve the property. You can improve it if you're doing some minor modifications, but not changing the substance of the property. So one of the things also is you can't draw down equity that's happened in your self-managed super fund. So like outside of super, you buy a property, you build a property, over a number of years it goes up in value, you can go back to the bank and draw down the capital out of the equity and then reinvest that money. In a self-managed super fund, you cannot do that. So if you build something, or if you buy something and you got a loan against it, and if you might have developed it a little bit, fixed up some bathrooms because they're broken, you can do that, but you can't change the purpose of the property or use of the property. But if you increase in value of the property, say $200,000, you can't go back and leverage against that extra money.
No, you can't do like you do in the real world, which is, I guess, pull the equity out and then load up into another
again.
project.
No.
Yeah.
So it comes back into structuring again.
Yeah, and that structuring comes down to, I guess, something that is called limited recourse borrowing arrangement, or LRBA. And that is, I guess, the legal structures and entities that you need to be setting up, I guess, within the self-managed super fund, so that each investment stands in isolation. Mate, tell us a little bit about the LRBA and what is it effectively?
All right. This is a way, one, for the self-managed super fund to be able to borrow money, and the SIS Act basically says you can borrow money, but if you borrow money in the self-managed super fund, then all the assets of the super fund are now liable if something goes wrong with that investment. So an LRBA, it's another trust within the self-managed super fund trust. Excuse me, it's got a corporate trustee in most instances, and it now, I suppose, puts a wall around the liability and also the asset that you're building inside the self-managed super fund. So if anything goes wrong, the lender only has recourse against that one asset. It can't touch anything outside of that in your super fund in general. So it gives protection of the fund against that one asset, or that one liability that you're putting against the asset.
Yeah, and as a result of that, so effectively, your self-managed super fund is a trust, and an LRBA is a trust within the first trust. And so it's effectively siloing that asset to protect it, because your super fund is a protected species, and they're trying to make sure that if something goes wrong from an investment perspective, that it doesn't have a cascading effect and take out absolutely everything else.
That's right.
And it's because it's in that silo is why you can't tap into the equity, because you can't cross-contaminate. If you're a Ghostbusters, you can't cross the streams.
That's it. I like that.
You can't cross the streams, that means that's why you can't pull the equity out. Okay, but it's only one asset within each of those LRBAs. But that asset, when we say one asset, that one asset could, in theory, be a 6-pack of townhouses, for example. That's one asset.
That's right. Yeah, as long as it's all under one title.
All under one title, correct. So you couldn't have 6 individual dwellings in there, but if you had the 6-pack and one title, then that would be okay.
That's it. Yep. Yeah, very much.
Now, because of the limitations within the LRBA, getting lenders to, want to lend into those situations, we're going to find typically that the big 4 banks don't like playing in that space. Is that right?
Yeah. Several years ago, they got slapped on the wrist because of some stuff they were doing in financial planning field, and they got some big fines. And since then, they pulled out of the market. So if you go, some banks, if you had a loan with them back then, some banks still carry that long-term debt, but you can't go back to those banks at the moment and engage a new loan in a self-managed super fund. They won't even look at it. So now you're going to tier 2 and tier 3 lenders to be able to provide that facility. And there's lots of them out there, and they play in different sections of, I suppose, that they have a different appetite around Australia for what they're lending, but there's lots of people out there that'll now allow you to do that.
And I guess as a result of that, limited options, interest rates are going to be reflective of that and that sort of thing. Make sure that you're actually talking to a finance broker to try and help you actually navigate that process. There are plenty of those solutions out there, folks, but I guess your broker needs to be, well versed in that particular element to help you out.
And even we talked about financial planners and accountants. Brokers are the same. Some brokers won't touch SMSF lending because they think it's too complicated. They see SMSF and they put up their hands and it's like, no, it's all too hard. But when you understand an SMSF is just a specific trust. Yeah, there's some specific documents around it, but when you get a broker that understands the investment vehicle, then they can be your best friend.
Now, because it's, siloed off, the investment itself needs to, I like to refer it to as washing its own face. It needs to be able to stand alone in its own capacity and pay its own bills and that sort of thing. That doesn't mean that it can't be negatively geared. So it is possible to actually have negatively geared properties in there. But if that's the case, you're going to need to demonstrate a regular and consistent contribution into the super fund, so that the super fund can demonstrate that it can actually fund that negative cash flow situation. Otherwise, that might stop your borrowing capacity. So if you're intending to own anything in any property in an LRBA, make sure that you've been contributing on a regular basis into your fund to demonstrate that serviceability element.
Very much.
Don't be doing just one-off payments every now and then.
I think it comes back to financial management, and if we're in business or we're working a job, whatever, like how are we managing our money, and why shouldn't one of the things I was told many years ago, and it took me a while to actually hear this, is we've got to be learning to pay ourselves first. And usually
Robert Kiyosaki, rule number 1.
Yeah. Like usually we pay ourselves last, but we've got to pay ourselves first. And superannuation is paying yourself first. So whether you're just paying the 11.5% or you're putting in some additional contributions and getting some better tax deductions, it's looking after you and paying you and making sure your long-term retirement is in the best state it can be. So, yeah.
Note to self, top mine up.
So on that, and this is where sometimes working with the right financial advisors there's options out there where you can add some additional money to your super funds along the way, and you can get tax deductions for it up front, or there's things called pay it forward rules or downsizer rules where you can put chunks of money in. So these are things where you need to get the right advice and understand the SIS Act correctly to be able to maximize the long-term benefit for yourself as well.
Yeah, and I guess the best people to talk to there typically is going to be your accountant, who's got I guess that self-managed super fund experience, but also the financial planner as well. But I would say probably lean more towards your accountant in that instance to go, what are the advantages I can do for, I guess, lumpy chunks?
Yeah.
And you can, depending upon your personal circumstances, you can sometimes backdate the last 2 or 3 years worth of contributions in one hit. So
yeah, it's actually up to last 5. So get some advice, because even that one, in backdating it, when it's done correctly, you can make that contribution, and you get a tax deduction in the next financial year for that contribution as well. So you can save some tax and get a tax refund.
There you go. Yeah. So said the accountant. So didn't hear that from me, folks. Okay, so we've heard about all the issues and challenges look, we can't borrow in a self-managed super fund. The development has to, I guess, be able to wash its own face, or the property needs to wash its own face. So we can't borrow to improve, I should say. It needs to be an arm's length transaction. So there's all these constraints that are sitting in and around that. You've touched on the fact that, I guess, Supavest have actually got a solution that sits behind this. Firstly, what's the name of the solution that you guys have? What's your marketing name?
We work under Supavest, and we have a one contract property solution.
One contract property, folks. That's the key term that you're actually looking at. So, Raymond, how does one contract property? How does it start to solve the problem? What's the first part of the equation that helps, I guess, unravel the mess?
All right. First of all, having the knowledge that it is possible, and we do this. We've been doing this for 4 years. We've got an ATO public product ruling against what we do, and we can do this on anything you want to choose to build in your super fund. So that's the first. I said the other day, I coined this. That's our superpower at Supavest. You've got total choice about what you can build. So understanding that is the starting point up front.
So, and I'll pick up on a word you said, and you may have said it as a Freudian slip. You said you've got an ATO ruling against you. I think you mean an ATO ruling for you.
So against when I
in your favour.
It is. Thanks for pointing that out. When I came up with this solution, I came up with the business plan. I then went to the ATO and I said, I need a private product ruling to make sure that my understanding of the legislation fits in with what we're doing. And they came back and said, after a couple of interviews and negotiations, they said, we actually can't give you a private product ruling. And I said, why not? And they said, because we've already got a public product ruling covering exactly what you do, so you can operate under that. So the ATOs looked at us, they continue looking at us to make sure that we're continually compliant. And yeah, we operate under that legislation.
Yeah, very good. So the first part of the solution, as I understand it, is that the key to unlocking this is that you act as an independent third-party entity to the transaction.
Yes.
And because of that, the arm's length transaction rules are instantly put at bay. And then that is, I guess, the first step in then unraveling everything else.
It is. And understanding how that works is you come up, your clients come up with the solution of what they want to build. Now they can try and navigate and do it themselves and get in all worlds of hurt, or they come to us. We actually end up buying the block of land off of them, or what they've chosen. We then sign a contract with the builder that they've negotiated with to build the property for themselves. We take those two. I sign them personally with my company. We add on our holding costs, the rates, the taxes, the insurance, the land tax, everything that if you were doing this yourself, that you would be paying. And yeah, there's a little bit of a profit margin in there for us. We give you a single contract price. You're happy with that? We then on-sell that to your super fund at the same time as us signing the land and build contract with your developer and builder. So we buy it and then we automatically sell it at the agreed price to your self-managed super fund. And then the process starts from there.
So you went through that very quick. I'm going to try and break that down for people to actually, I guess, follow the bouncy ball and understand how it solved some of the challenges from a little bit earlier. So firstly, folks, you go and find your deal. That's the most important part. Okay. So you make sure that it is a deal. You put your feasibilities together. You do all the things that are needed to do. You present that through to, I guess, Raymond and his team at Supavest. They determine firstly that it is a deal, and then they are going to then be the people who then settle on the land. Okay.
Yes.
So it is not you doing it. So they've stepped into that third party role in order to.
And the important part about that is, if you settle on the block of land, now it becomes, if you try and sell that to your super fund, or it comes through us to your super fund, it can become very murky about where the arm's length transaction starts. So you don't even want to be attached to the deal because we end up building it. All right. Yeah. And if you settle on it, then there's double stamp duty because you've then got to sell that to us. And then we sell the package to the self-managed super fund. So you're just increasing your costs.
Yeah. So in effect, Supavest become the developer.
Quasi, yeah.
But our audience are developers, and yes, they want to run the project, and they want to control things, and they want to make sure that they get the best outcome for the project. So Supavest then contracts back to them to actually run the deal. Is that correct?
Exactly.
So you get the best of both worlds. You've now got the control of the project to make sure that you're getting, I guess, the best outcomes, because you and only you are going to look after your best interests. But now you've got that third-party transaction side of things sitting in there. Now,
and then behind that, we have our own project management team that makes sure that the builder and developer are actually delivering what that they're contracted to deliver to us as well.
Yeah, because you've taken on, I guess, a financial risk. If you are actually settling on this property in the first place, you want to make sure the developer is actually good at what they do. So you're sitting over them, I guess, sanity checking the work that they're doing is actually of a quality standard and time compliant and all that sort of thing.
That's it.
Yeah. Now, again, you guys have settled on it. So Supavest has settled. So you're the one who's going to be taking on all the holding costs, and you're also the one who coordinates the funding arrangements. So you're the one who goes and gets the senior debt that is actually going to be the construction loan. Is that correct?
That's it. So we cover that. We take that responsibility. And from the self-managed super fund point of view, you're signing a single part contract with us, buying the completed property off of us once it's completed. So you have a contract at the start. We manage that whole process. And one of the things that it happens once in a while, the builders go broke. Right? If you've chosen a builder and they fail to proceed, because Supavest has the contract with the builder, your super fund has now got a contract with Supavest to provide it a completed property. It's our responsibility to be able to make sure that property gets developed and completed. So we have to then work with you to find another builder to cover that. Those costs and that liability is on me and my company. It's not on your self-managed super fund. And this is where the process that we've put in place protects the self-managed super fund, just as where the SIST Act is trying to do it if you try to do it yourself, and that's why they stop you doing it. With us doing it, we provide that buffer in between to make sure your self-managed super fund's protected as well.
Yeah, so again, people may have not picked up the subtlety of what you said in a piece of that. You're effectively settling on the land initially, and you are the one doing the development, even though you've got I guess in this instance, the developer running the deal on your behalf, but it's effectively Supavest being the developer.
Yes.
And then through your single part contract, you then sell the finished product completed back to the super fund.
That's it.
Now, that's the magic here, folks, because you are buying a finished product. You are not buying a development per se. Okay.
Or the super fund's not.
Oh, sorry. So the super fund. When I say you, the super fund is what I meant to say. So thank you.
The super fund can only buy what they call a single acquirable asset, which is a completed product, and we're developing it, and we've now sold it to them at a completed stage. And that's where also when you look at the other end, is funders love that. So now you're maximizing the funders that you can go to with your broker, because they're now buying a completed product in the self-managed super fund, which is a lovely position to be in.
Yeah, which means the challenge of, hey, you can't borrow to improve the product, tick. It means you can't, I guess, do the development in the fund itself, tick. The third-party arrangements, that you have to be an arm's length transaction. There's a third party involved, tick. So basically what you've done is you've looked at every single one of those challenges and went, well, this is the mechanism to actually enable that to actually occur, is to actually do that in that very specific order and process.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, in order to do that, clearly Supavest needs to exit the deal at the end. You want the super fund to be buying it. And you've said it's a predetermined price.
Yes.
So at the start of the project, you do a market analysis and go, what is that finished product actually going to be worth? And you sign.
No. What we do, I'd love to do that. I'll make more money. No, what we've got a fixed formula in place. Like, you'll come to us with a block of land with the builder's costs, and we take that and we put that into a straight formula, and we say, okay, the land price, the build price, the state that it's in, because that'll determine the stamp duty on the land that we're buying, and the length of time of the build. Now, that will give us our holding costs as a quasi developer ourselves. So how much interest we've got, what are the land tax implications, how much stamp duty we're paying, what are the rates and the taxes, what are the insurances, what are all the holding costs that we're going to have in that period of time. Now, and that then comes up with our single contract price, and that's what we'll sell it for. And for example, where we've done a duplex, we will give them a price, and we've had some duplexes where we sell it to the self-managed super fund as one product, and then other times we'll sell it as two contracts, because during the process then we title them separately, and we sell it as two separate titles. So the uplift in profit, that from the developer's point of view, is now fixed. We've got a starting price. We're not changing it as the market changes. We've got a finished price that we're selling it to you, that we've predetermined at the start based upon our holding costs, not where we see the market going. So
effectively, you're selling it back to them at cost price plus a small margin for your administration and overheads.
Exactly.
Yeah. So not at market rate. So there is an uplift between what they're buying it at and the market price at that point in time. So they're instantly manufacturing profits
absolutely
into the fund at that point in time. Now, in order to do that, you need a contract of sale from the super fund. And what are the financial obligations for the super fund in order to, I guess, set all of that up? Because clearly Supavest are taking, I guess, a fairly healthy risk in this process by being, I guess, the person in the middle. How does Supavest mitigate that risk from a financial perspective?
All right. To work with us, we need to have a 35% deposit of the single contract price, and that's paid to us up front. Now, where people they might have done deals with, in the past, you would have heard a 90-10 arrangement where they've bought a high-rise apartment. Now, as I said at the start, I'm not a fan of that. but then the risk sits with the developer as well. But I've said, okay, to mitigate the risk and also to make sure the super fund is in a financial viable position at the end, we take a 35% deposit up front, and then that gives me the ability to fund the 65% for the construction side of the deal. So the super fund, or whether it's the super fund, because we've had some deals where the super fund has only got 20%, and I take that as a deposit, then I go to the market and I find another 15% of private money. I put that together with my money, and then we fund the deal accordingly. So even though 35% is what I need as a company, I've got, I suppose, flexibility of where I make that 35% up from.
Yeah, so that could be out from the market, that could be private investors, that could be high net worth individuals, there could be all sorts of people that actually contributed to that. It plausibly, I guess it could be like the friends and family and that sort of thing that might be wanting to help you out, all sorts of things to try and get you there.
Exactly.
But you got to get up, I guess, come up with the shortfall. Either
right.
way, mate, a very, very creative solution to actually get this across the line. Now, it's not going to be a fit for everyone, but it is certainly another tool in the bow for everyone to actually do.
Very much.
Now, in order to do this, I guess just reach out to yourselves at supervest.com and inquire about the project that they're actually looking to engage in.
Yeah. And like, I suppose we'll give something back. Can we put up a link?
Yeah, mate. So we talked about this a little bit earlier, folks.
Yeah.
Because of the size of our community, Raymond has very generously said that anyone who's interested in actually doing this, should they mention Property Developer Network and go to this specific link here, if you go to that link, then they'll know that it's actually come from us, and they'll give you $1,500 off any legal fees to actually set up this structure. So I guess very, very worthwhile to at least reach out and actually have that chat. Whether you go ahead or not, or otherwise, I'm sure that Raymond and the team would love to help you, I guess at least talk to you and give you some insights into what's possible.
Absolutely. And it's complex. We do this every day of the week. So I'm going to say, if you've ever watched a plaster, I don't know if you've tried plastering.
No.
It is a challenge. But when you watch a professional do a plastering or bricklayer, and they make it look so easy because they've got the skills and they've been doing it for so long. Like, I'm blessed to have a team around me that we've been doing this, and we do this lots of times, hundreds of times a year. And the systems and the processes that we've got internally make it seamless. It makes it simple, even though it's complex. And as a developer, you want to be able to minimize the complexities and enjoy your life as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So now, is there any limitation in the size of the deal, the type of the deal, that like you mentioned earlier as a throwaway line, like now anything's possible. Is it truly now anything's possible?
Absolutely. It comes back down to the deposit that you've got. So if you've, like, for example, we're doing a commercial development, we're building a warehouse for a company, or actually for an individual that is going to have it in his self-managed super fund, and it's a $4.5 million deal. I think the largest deal that we've done is about $6.5 million at the moment. It comes back to, if the deposit's there, let's run. And that's anywhere in Australia. So I suppose the choice that I've got, I've come up with this solution to make sure that when I saw this, I had a limitation, and I had a background of seeing my dad retire on the government pension. And when this epiphany came to me 4.5-5 years ago, I didn't want people to be limited on how they can use their own money. So I suppose the criteria that we've got, 35% deposit against the block of land, let's build it, what can we do? That's my limitation. It's like, how do we change people's lives over the next 10 years so that they can have a great retirement, having great property that they can develop inside their super fund. So bring it on and let's work.
And some of us a little bit closer to retirement age than we. Technically, allegedly, I am retired, but I think I'm working harder now than I have ever.
Come on, Rob, you still look like a young guy.
You're right, I do look like it, but I'm not actually young, mate. I'm not going to reveal my age, but for anyone who's been following me for quite a while, I've been 37 years in the property development game, having got in at the age of 18. So you guys do the math. Yeah, I'm close, mate. I'm very, very close. Raymond, mate, it's been a pleasure, I guess, finding about, Supavest and I guess the product and solution that you guys have got. It's a very creative solution, so congratulations to you and the team for actually putting it together. Folks, just a reminder, if you mention Property Developer Network, follow that link below specifically, then Raymond's offered $1,500 discount on your legal fees and actually setting up the structure to actually put this together, and they'll happily walk you through how you do that. Now, so for everyone else out there, we get a ton of industry experts, just like Raymond, come to our regular networking events. We have town planners, civil engineers, architects, lawyers, that sort of thing. We run these events all the way around the country. We run them currently Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, and Adelaide. You can physically turn up, or you can also live stream to anywhere across the country. We run 45 events of these a year. We're soon to be going to Perth, folks. It's not far away, so watch this space. So, folks, we'd love to see you at one of our upcoming meetups. Until then, Raymond, it's been a pleasure, mate. I'm going to say thank you.
Thank you.
Bye for now.
Thanks, guys. Ciao.